to Skill of the Month Club. This is a Tuesday chat. We're in our second month when we're dealing with old-fashioned cooking and scratch cooking. And the guest I have here is someone that some of you will recognize from my very first Tuesday chats on this channel. In fact, let's go ahead and tell the truth. This channel wouldn't exist if it weren't for Angela Withers. So, hello Angela, thanks for hanging out with us.
Thank you. And my new channel wouldn't exist if it weren't for Esther. So it's been a blessing, a mutual benefit, hopefully. But good to be back.
So we're going to talk about scratch cooking. We're going to talk about old-fashioned cooking. Angela's going to share some ideas and resources just to help anybody who wants to do a little bit more cooking from raw ingredients rather than from something more prepared or something that maybe doesn't have ingredients in it that you even recognize or know what's there. I'm going to confess that Angela's kind of an intimidating friend, especially when it comes to cooking, because literally in her kitchen it's all glass. There's no plastic, and that's intentional.
Yes.
Which, I mean, so many of us would like to do that. But you walk into the kitchen and it's completely gorgeous. She's making all of her things from scratch. Something you may not expect from that description is that Angela hasn't always been hasn't always been that way.
No.
Is that
no,
right?
No. And I think we talked about it a little bit in one of the other videos we did together where it was things I was feeding my children that was actually bringing on health problems and bringing on a lot of problems that weren't desirable, like early puberty, and really made me delve in and figure out what is in our food and why is my 4-year-old showing signs of early puberty. That's alarming. That's very alarming. And it really opened a can of worms that I didn't know I wanted to open at that time, but I'm very grateful I did because it brought a lot of truths to the forefront, and it also made me realize just what a great skills we have lost that our ancestors had. And going back to those skills and that understanding has been a long journey. And Esther's sweet to say that she comes into my house and it's in order, my kids are well behaved because I don't have a constant monitor. If we had this camera just set up, you would see the reality of we're just a regular family with our own challenges and stuff. But definitely I have spent a lot of time researching, a lot of time practicing, a lot of time messing up in the kitchen over the last 5 years to get to the point that we're at. When I first switched over to whole foods, so this is something that I would suggest if there's someone who is switching over to making your food from scratch, there are a few things that I really messed up on, and hopefully this will be helpful to people. The first thing is, and I don't know that this was a bad thing, it kind of maybe just points out my character, but maybe the weakness in my character as well, is that I knew I didn't want the artificial colors, I didn't want the artificial flavors, I didn't want the hormones in the food, and not just, I mean, there's natural hormones in a lot of things, but I didn't want those synthetic hormones anymore in anything. So I quit everything cold turkey, and our family starved for a while. We really did. I only knew like potatoes and apples. I didn't know what else, or carrots.
Wow.
I didn't know what else to give my family, and it really gave my family kind of a bad taste in their mouth for whole food cooking because I didn't know how to do it, but I dove right in. And so that's a suggestion that I would have is start out at the pace that it's going to be a happy blessing to your family.
That's the advice we give about everything. That's on every video.
Okay.
We should just write it at the bottom.
Right at the bottom. Start out at the pace that you can manage, and it's going to give your family a good experience with it. And if you are wanting to really clear out a lot of the junk, clear it out, but be willing to use stepping stones. So instead of saying, I'm not buying any more bread from the store and making everything from scratch, if you're at that point, that's fine. And that's great. That's fabulous. But if you're not at that point, just maybe keep a couple loaves of bread from the store in your home so that your family has something to eat while you learn how to bake bread over the next few months. And allowing yourself to have stepping stones. I really didn't allow myself stepping stones. I wanted to get from this point to this point. I wanted to make it happen immediately. And my family had to go through a lot of challenges and really hard times in between there because I wasn't willing to take stepping stones. So that's the first thing I would say is look at where you want to be and look at where you are and chart out a path that would make yourself and your family happy getting to that final destination. Second thing I would say is that when I started out switching over to real foods, I brought in a lot of things that were very much out of my climate. I heavy reliance on coconut oil. And one day I really did have this awakening where I suddenly realized, where in my area is there a ripe coconut tree? No, palm tree, nowhere. Right? You're buried in snow. And so at that point in time, I realized that I had learned all of these recipes and I'd learned all this cooking with foods that are coming from clear across the country or clear across the world. A heavy reliance on things that don't even grow in my area. And so then once I had all these recipes down, I had to kind of cut some of that stuff out and start learning how to use what was in my climate and in my area. So that added a whole nother lifestyle that my family had to go through.
Local foods lifestyle.
Yes, and figuring out how to get there. And so that's another thing is potentially recognizing what are you, if you're getting rid of certain foods because they're not as healthy, but you're bringing in other foods that might be very healthy, but is that something that may set you up for having to just relearn it all over again later? And the final thing that I would say, and this isn't something to change, but this is something that I would give as a suggestion, is follow your intuition. Above all of the cookbooks that are out there, or the cooking shows, or the blogs, or the programs that you can follow, your intuition is the very best resource that you can follow. And if you can tap into that and pay attention to some of the feelings that you get, if you're feeling like you're trapped by your new Whole Foods lifestyle because you won't allow yourself to buy a loaf of bread, and that it doesn't feel right inside, then it's okay, go and buy a loaf of bread. Follow that intuition, go and buy a loaf of bread, let your family eat, and bring those things in for a while, and just pick one that you feel good about, that you feel that's healthier than maybe the other options that you have been used to, and allow your family to eat and make it easier on yourself and not feel trapped by your goal to eat all whole foods. And that's something that I kind of did. I feel like I was so intent on wanting to do everything from scratch that I actually boxed myself in, and I boxed my family in to a degree as well. And when it could have been a lot easier. And my intuition was right there telling me it didn't feel right, that I felt trapped to this. I felt trapped to this goal of whole food cooking and eating. And it wasn't necessarily what my intuition was telling me to do. Yes, that was the destination, but my intuition was guiding me to use stepping stones, and I was kind of ignoring that for a while. So listen to that intuition, and it will really help you get to where you want to be in the most positive path, along the most positive path that will give your family a positive experience.
I think that's great advice, and I'm going to jump in on that too, because one of the things that our entire month of old-fashioned cooking is trying to emphasize is the idea of cooking without a recipe, and cooking in a way that doesn't require a recipe. I've struggled a bit with having to go to a book and receive the necessary information in order to feed myself. And I think that it's very liberating to be able to understand that you already know what you need to know to feed yourself. There are a lot of things in the way, maybe, and we've certainly been trained to believe that we need big factories to do it for us, rather than being able to use our own hands to do it. But really, if you don't get anything else out of this whole month of the Skill of the Month Club, the idea that you could cook from your own passion and your own skill, that's really most of what we're trying to get at.
And I'll completely agree with that, is that it's been the experimenting that has taught me just as much, if not more, than the cookbooks and the cooking programs that I've really delved into to learn from. It's been the experimenting, it's been the trial and error. And a lot of the things that I've been led to, for example, with seasonal eating, a lot of that really came through that intuition that it wasn't feeling right. And the thought would come to me, I'm relying on a coconut tree that grows nowhere near me.
Right.
And so it's those thoughts and that intuition. Listen to those. Pay attention to those. It'll guide you to. I found that will always guide you to a lifestyle where you're more self-sufficient, where you don't have to be reliant on someone else growing or shipping the foods to you, but you can actually take what you have and you can make something of it, even without a recipe. And you begin to kind of learn how to use what you have and when to use it. So I used to really plan out my meals. I used to print everything out, and I knew what I was going to have for breakfast, what I was going to make for breakfast the next morning, so that I could soak those grains the night before, or whatever it was that I needed to do, or what we might be having the next night for dinner, so that I could prepare those grains or prep the legumes or whatever it was that I needed to do for the meal. And now I'm kind of, as I'm learning to eat seasonally, it's more a matter of what do I have in my pantry and which squash is going to go rotten first.
Yes, this is my life.
And this is what our ancestors could do.
Yeah.
They knew how to take what they had and use the leftovers. And that's why they ate so perfectly, really, in season, is they were using just what was available and what they had. And it was okay to put on a little bit of extra pounds during the winter when you're using a lot of the meats and the potatoes and the breads and the grains, when you're using a lot of that, because come spring and summer, before the garden is really producing, they're going to be relying on a lot of sprouts, and we're going to slim right back down because you're going to be working all summer long to be able to grow and store and stock up everything that you need to make it through that winter again. So it's a natural balance if you really live in harmony with the seasons.
We said that we're talking about cooking without a recipe, but that doesn't mean that you can't still enjoy recipe books. I've asked Angela to share some recipe books that might go with her feelings about whole foods or the kind of lifestyle that she's looking for. So she's going to show us a few books that she recommends.
Yes, so when I first started out, switching to whole foods, this was a book that really helped me, Original Fast Foods, and there are a whole bunch of books that teach very similar principles out there as to this. This one is very heavily reliant on more of a plant-based diet, and that's where I learned a lot of the principles behind having plant-based, which is what I learned is really a warm weather diet. And then as far as learning a lot of the traditions that our ancestors, the way that our ancestors cooked, nourishing traditions, I loved that. And really, between the two of them, there's only a couple recipes that I really use out of these, and most of them I've taken and I've tweaked and I've made it my own, depending on what I have or what our family likes. But both of those, I was able to get a bigger vision of how much our way of eating has changed from what our ancestors knew. For thousands of years, the way people used to eat drastically changed, especially around World War II era up until our present day, really changed a lot in there. And I feel like those books gave me a clearer vision of where people on the earth used to be all those years ago and how they lived and used what was available to them. And they learned that and taught that to their children. It was just a natural way of life. And so here we are in our 30s, and we're just learning a lot of the basics that our great-great-great-grandparents knew when they were 5. And we're having to learn them and bring those skills back. And what a blessing it is that we have some books that we can rely on, that we can help each other, especially through the social media and through the YouTube channel, to be able to help each other with the things that we're learning, because I've studied a lot of this, but I have yet to raise my own animals and really understand their seasons. I've read a lot about it, but I'm excited to get to the point where we have that, and I can know for myself the seasons of the animals. But until then, I'll just live in harmony with what I've read and be able to use what I am growing myself and making myself from scratch. But more than anything, if I can say anything and have it resonate with anyone, it's that this is not how I was living a few years back. It's so possible to change and begin to implement truth into our life and implement true principles into our diet and into our eating. It takes work and it takes persistence and it takes stepping stones. Use those stepping stones and allow yourself those stepping stones, because we are here and we want to become here. We want to be able to get back to those traditions and those lifestyles and those skills that our ancestors knew, but we've grown up in a world that has very much forgotten those. So allow yourself those stepping stones to get back to that, if that's what the desire of your heart is, and trust your intuition. It will guide you to know which stepping stone is the next one to take, so that you don't plateau, but you continue to move towards your goal. So if I can do it and we can make the changes that we've made, then anyone can. And hopefully some of the things that I've shared will help people to get a straighter course than we did. And you don't have to do all these ups and downs, different lifestyles, like my children said, ins and outs before you can kind of arrive where you want to. But it's very possible, and each of us can help each other with the things we're learning to get there.
I'm so glad that Angela put it in that context to understand that we are, as a community of people looking for homestead skills, what we now call homestead skills, which might have at one point just called life skills?
Regular life.
Regular life,
yes.
It's because as a community, a whole society of people has let these skills go. And that's something that my mother, Carla Emery, was really observing in the 60s and 70s. She was able to say, I don't want these skills to be lost. And to put them in a book, kind of like these two that Angela's holding in her lap, and to be able to say, we're going to hold on to this information. But even though some individuals wanted to maintain those skills and write them down, as a whole community, as a whole society, it takes a lot of effort to restore these lifestyle changes, these old-time lifestyle skills and ways of doing things. So if it does seem sort of discouraging, or if it seems like, wow, nobody's really doing this as well as I had hoped they would, it isn't because we're weak, it isn't because we're failures, it's because we really have a challenge for us.
I love what you were saying about that our whole society has really let these skills go, because the thing that's the most sinister about it is not that those skills have been forgotten, but it's what those skills do for us that is lost. So at first, I wanted help for my family, and that's what was motivating this change. But my goodness, as soon as I started going down this path, I started feeling more and more confident and enabled. I was no longer dependent upon some other company producing for me. I had confidence that I could actually do it myself. So when our society slowly switched and made this change to where we lost all of those skills, we became far less self-sufficient, self-reliant, confident in our own ability. But the other thing that is probably even the bigger factor that we lost is the ability to create, the ability to take something and make it ours and change it and mold it and learn. That brings so much joy and such a sense of accomplishment to all of us. It really does boost our confidence when we can take something and take what we have and make something out of it that can be beneficial to us and our family. So to lose that ability to create is probably one of the most sad aspects of our society, losing these skills.
And what are the joys in bringing it back again? So let's all get into our kitchens and make something from scratch. I hope that anybody else out there has enjoyed these talks, and that you can feel free to ask us questions or to contribute your own ideas, information, whatever you'd like to add to the conversation. We really appreciate having you hang out with us.
Thanks for having me. Good luck with all your cooking.
See you next time.